Clarity by Dragon's Chapter 16, Emblem Part 2. So, are we all set for the big day? Roman Torchwick asked with a cigar and a smirk, pulling out a purple plastic lighter. Although after a few false starts, his grin turned into a grimace, quickly turning his back on his business partner, as if it were their frigid stares smothering his flame. When at last he got it to light, he shoved the disposable device into the pocket of his perilous suit in disguise, vowing that after this next payday he would get something to suit his soft persona. And that's all it was, really. Roman was an actor, an imposter just trying to survive in the big leagues. The cigar, lighter, suit, and smirk were all just props to help bolster this image. Although the fact that the noxious smoke bothered his fondest allies was an added bonus. Maybe that's a question you should ask yourself, Roman. It hardly mattered, for Adam Torres held nothing but contempt for humans anyway, and this one especially. He sneered at the despicable man, nose wrinkling in disgust underneath the white fangs, the proprietary grim mask. No need to worry, Torchwick. My men will be more than ready when the time comes. No disrespect, but I think I will anyway. Of course, little with his cigar smoke. Roman meant every ounce of offense his skepticism conveyed. The only thing he was mildly confident on was the fact that the White Fanged leader wouldn't have him killed. Not yet, anyway. Far be it from me to judge, but are you sure your soldiers are up to par? Call it paranoia, or maybe professional experience, but all the numbers in the world aren't gonna matter if we get a goody two-shoe huntsman or huntress nosing in. Which is why, since assuming leadership, I have made sure to eliminate any weaknesses in the White Fang. Each word was not in the way a bull chewed cud, because Adam knew the sleazy man was right. Huntsmen were still a nuisance. Also, he wasn't going to risk breaking the deal while she was there. Speaking of which, Cinder, the case you insisted on handling is taken care of. In truth, Adam couldn't stand the woman lurking in the corner any more than Roman, but he also couldn't show it, couldn't exactly refuse when she offered to take the skin off his hands off for good. As we speak, unlike Torchwick, she spoke with the confidence that was 100% natural. Without even trying, Cinderfall was the epitome of the female fatale, and if she promised it, death was assured. Any minute now we should be receiving a word of success. I find it a little out of character that you would bother yourself with such a small fry. Roman in fact found it more interesting than his cigar, which had about an image of ash building up at the tip. I mean, why not just put the brats on it? They were they work for free, don't they? Practically disposable. Cinder's two brats slash self-appointed bodyguards were obviously thinking the same of the two-wit criminal as they stared towards him with the intent of bodily harm. However, both Emerald, Sustry, and Mercury Black halted as their boss held up a perfectly manicured hand, chuckling breathlessly. I wouldn't expect you to understand subtlety, Roman, but called it killing two birds with one stone. Speaking of birds and killing, Emerald chirped, anxious for her mistress's attention. She could care less about the rest of them. I think we have bats in our belfry, or else a bunch of flying rats in our attic. It took a second for them to figure out what the green-haired girl meant, but before Cinder or anyone else could comment, a response came from the rafters. "You're not very bright, are you, Gaia-san?" Four shadowy figures dropped in front of the conspirators and suddenly found themselves confronted with half a dozen weapons pointed their way, though this had little effect on the fox cheer of the one wearing a blank white mask. Firstly, bats are mammals. Second, bitter melon, we were invited. But no one apart from Emerald was cared, far more concerned with how the intruders had arrived in the first place. Wait, what did you call me? My, you have incredible timing. Cinder's smile was disalarming, only matched by the faceless mercenaries who had also yet to draw their weapons. At least I assume you haven't been waiting up there long, and I assume you're going to tell me what a squad of assassins are doing here, Cinder. None of the others had lowered their guard. Adam Torres even considered turning his on Cinder, fearing a possible betrayal. Oh, Adam, I do apologize for neglecting to inform you. Not appearing in the least sorry, Cinder looked like a cat who had just caught a mouse, and for a second made the four assassins wonder who had gotten the drop on whom. But how about I let them explain it, if you would be so kind, my dears? There was a collective recoil when the Fox masked member stepped forward, but it was only when he did that the other parties realized how short they were in comparison to everyone else. Any comment on the assassin's youth, however, was cut off by Kitsune's cold professionalism. "You are the one responsible for the contract, then?" Emerald almost took offense at the blunt tone the boy took towards her mistress, but she was hesitant to get between Cinder and her expectant look when the young assassin proceeded to scroll from his belt and unfurled it. "Mission assassination. Target Tuscan Verona, formerly Tuscan Valdez. A timetable within 3 days of acceptance. Payment the standard rate upon completion, with client assuming responsibility for additional complication including suppressed or neglected information. Current status." Only when he paused did the others realize he had been drawn into Kitsune's monotone, without waiting to hear the conclusion, as if there were any other outcome to a meeting with assassins. "Completed within parameters. Then Tuscan is dead." Adam found the whole thing incredulous, and was still wary about the extent of the assassin's purpose there. "Do you have proof?" That wasn't part of the contract." Hawk's mask was as quick to snap as his namesake. Too quick, he realized a moment too late, as Taka barely withheld his flinch. "There was no specific instructions as to how we should handle the mission." It was equal parts impressive and depressing to the team how their leader could talk about murder as emotionally as ordering a pizza. "Meatlovers, please. Extra mushrooms, and make sure to scrub the gunpowder." As such, we disposed of the body using standard protocol. This seemed to duplicate all sides, though being responsible for the White Fang, Taurus did not take some time to consider. To tell the truth, I had hoped his demise would send a message to the other deserters. However, I suppose this works as well, especially if we can now count on the support of the assassins. That was the idea. Cinder preened, every bit as smug as Roman had previously been. "I wanted to see, firstly, if the assassins would be willing to take a side; second, if their operatives were even worth the money; and third, well." The fourth assassins recognized the gleam which came at the woman's eyes, having seen it too many times behind bars of moments before the execution block. Theirs was a hard job, and it was easy to be pushed too far, but bloodlust was that actually enjoyed the killing, had no place in the organization, and were swiftly dealt with. Well, clearly that's not an issue. Our cause has no place for compassion, and I figured that if they could off a man as innocent as Tuscan, they would serve us well. No. Or the rest of Team Kansai was feeling better about their decision to spare the Faunus' father. Kitsune, no. Naruto could only think of how close he had come to making the wrong choice. It filled him with the revulsion and an emotion that was so visceral he was forced to recognize it as bile crept up his throat and converted to acid in his voice. Was this how Ruby felt about him originally? It is not in our best interest to take contracts from someone who could so callously sacrifice their own. If you are willing to do that to your own comrades, what is there to stopping you from doing it to us? For the foreseeable future, the assassins will not be accepting missions from either White Fang or whatever organization it is you represent. Excuse me? The room was silent except for Cinder, the assassin's own team, too shocked to rejoice in seeing the woman taken down a peg. No doubt, though, if push come to shove, they would leap to his side in an instant. They were with their captain, now more than ever. You might want to consult with the adults before making such an important decision, kid. My decision is Kitsune, and I have not been a child for a long time. Those who had so recently been called brat wanted to scoff at this declaration, but they couldn't. Not even Mercury, who had killed his own father in self-defense, would dare refute his claim. There was something in this child's demeanor which reminded him painfully of that night, a phantom sensation in his long-gone legs telling him to run while he still could. And as it so happens, I have a mandate to make whatever tactic decisions I believe are in the best interest of the assassins. So you have any complaints, I suggest you file a formal inquiry with the Chief of Intelligence. They'd heard this last phrase before, but for once Tim Kansai found himself grinning behind their mask. The directive given to them by Tasso probably wasn't meant to be used like this, but it was too much a temptation after so long getting screwed over by that station. Perhaps what you are saying is true enough. However, from my perspective, they could already see where Adam was going when he gave a subtle hand gesture to his guards. It seems to me that the only thing standing between our organization and corporation is you. They were suddenly standing back to back as the three factions, including Romans, started closing in. Adam's White Fang henchmen had also returned in time to support their leader from behind, but they were confronted with a pair of ink lines which stalked up on either of the assassins' flanks. It's too late to change your minds, you know, Roman. It's not too late to change your minds, you know. Roman himself was not eager for a bloodbath, while willing to offer at least the three of the miners a means to escape. I mean, probably is for Foxy there, but snap. For the rest of the room, it was the sound of stones in their throats dropping into their stomachs. It was the blue ice cracking in the middle of a frozen lake. It was the hangman's noose coming to rest in its natural state. It was Kitsune starting to undo one of the snaps on his arm. Even having felt it before, even knowing he was on their side, couldn't stem on the fear from spreading like a tremor through the earth, through the assassin's feet and bones, until they rang like a tuning fork in their ears. Being so close to the epicenter, Kitsune's teammate could only tolerate so much before it felt like their brains would liquefy and come pouring out of every orifice. They would have begged him to stop, but couldn't. No, this was the only way out, and they approved the decision with their silence, with their unwillingness to lay down their arms and stand down. They knew this voice. It was the same one which made them bow back in the council chamber, the one which now replaced their weapons in their holsters and had Kitsune carefully redoing his restraints. Who are you again? When when Dogal cocked his head, the shadow under his newsboy's cap shifted, and Tim Kasai thought they saw something violent behind the typical boredom, something beside the conspicuously a large guitar case near dragging by his feet. Strangely, or maybe it was normal, hardly anyone else seemed to notice how odd his arrival was. Seriously, what's with all the intrusions? In Emerald's eyes, he looked like many of the panhandlers she'd shared street corners with as an urchin, and old habits urged her to defend her territory. This ain't a bus stop, Gramp, so why don't you take your little sideshow act and, Cinder, let your dog send her tired dog to shut up. Being interrupted by Adam, Emerald looked first at him and then to Cinder to see if she was going to tolerate it, but Cinder wasn't looking at her. In fact, neither of them was looking anywhere else, but the newest addition to what was already becoming a difficult cast of characters. Cinder, Emerald, be quiet. Not even Mercury took this chance to mock her. Emerald, thoroughly cowed by her mistress's tone just as the woman herself, was alerted by tension in Adam Taurus. Adam, I take it you know this man. My name is Dogal. Adam held his tongue, knowing little more than that. The rest were rumors which, like the man himself, organized in Atlas. Dogal was a boogeyman in the faunus community there, Baba Yaga, and even Saint Nick all rolled into one. Sometimes he was the people's hero, other times the old guard's attack dog. Only one part of the story remained consistent. I'm here to put out the fire. Only when Dogal held out the shiny metal lighter did Roman realize his cigar had gone out, extinguished by the breath he held. Only when the flame leapt to life under his nose did the thief realize how close the strange man had suddenly gotten, within arm's reach and right in their midst. Thanks. Roman torchwick. Capping the lit wick with a heavy click, Dogal stared straight ahead as Roman sucked in a lungful of smoke and nearly choked. Your partner, Neapolitan, Neo, sorry, is waiting for you at your rendezvous at Grassroots Park. How did you might want to finish up here? Taxes on dairy product in Vale have gone up lately, so the old man who pushes the cart decided that rather than increase his prices, he would slightly decrease his scoop size. So Neo's nearly finished with her third cone. If you're not there by the time she's done, well, you know how she is with waiting. Roman had no idea how Dougal knew all this. Didn't really want to know, being honest. He didn't wait for Cinder's permission, either taking a shallow nod from Adam as his cue. Excuse me, the smoldering cigar but Roman left behind was extinguished underneath Dougal's loafer as he stepped forward and took the thief's place in the semicircle. Mercury black. As an afterthought, Dougal paused, stared sidelong at the boy next to Cinder, who blinked back suspiciously. Yeah, what of it? The black child tried to sound bored, but this intruder had a monopoly on the emotion, though whatever spell he had on the room was broken the moment he'd mentioned Mercury's surname. I'm sorry about your father, and this only made it worse, remedied slightly by the fact that everything Dougal said sounded like a lie. Mercury would have attacked the man anyway. Misgivings aside, if he hadn't noticed the boss's subtle hand gesturing telling him to stop. On the other hand, Dougal didn't even flinch. I guess what I mean is that it is a shame it had to be you. Black deserved his fate, but we were supposed to be the safeguards against such unprofessionalism. Like a professional gunman from a black and white mob film, the Gaull wiped up the case and cracked its latches before anyone could register the hostile action, and if it had been a weapon, those remaining knew that there would have been a lot fewer of them. I don't expect this make up for your hand hardships, but they are yours regardless. I am only the messenger. It was said that everyone had a bullet with their name on it. What lay in the case screamed a Mercury, a pair of top-of-the-line prosthetic legs shining like the chrome-lined chamber of a gun. Unlike his own jury-rigged customs, these were clearly not factory seconds, probably the only ones of their kind. Even though the manufacturer had been scrubbed, it was obvious they had come from the SDC's own grey room, the quasi-mythical test site where the sneaks created miracles for those with the means to pay for them. Don't want it. Too bad. And with that, Dougal shut the case and tossed it in Mercury's direction. Cinder had the foresight to avoid the flying container, but Mercury forgot just how damned heavy the artificial limbs could be. Not bad, as he discovered with a grunt, another point in favor of keeping them. I'm tired of carrying them around, and as I said, I'm just a messenger. With no more stops on the way, Dougal turned back to deliver the reason he was here. Now, I hear there's a problem. No one else said anything. The little display just now provided all the credentials Dougal needed. Well, as acting chief of intelligence, I'm sure I can handle your complaints. At last, someone with authority. This assumption went along with Cinder's perception of herself, though as the Gaul cast her a sidelong glance that was neither wary nor actually respectful, the woman felt her polite facade waver. Then perhaps you can clear something up for us. You see, this operative of yours does not wish to take further contracts from us, which I respect. However, he also claims to speak for your entire organization in this matter. Yes, Kitsune, nor anyone else really could speak after that. In the span of a few blinks, the obscure man had become the center of attention, for better or worse, as Cinder looked ready to tear the man apart, and against their better judgment, Team Kasai felt inclined to prevent that. Kitsune is one of our top agents. Given that I am only serving as interim chief of intelligence and do not intend to serve in this capacity forever, it seemed appropriate to confer him this authority. Once more, I agree with his tactical assessment. It would not benefit the assassins to consort with such fatuous groups. Seems to me a pity. Dougal gave a shrug, seemingly immune to the tension, let alone temperature in the room. Even though it was directed at them, Team Kasai could literally feel the heat from Cinder's glare, which made them sweat, but only seemed to harden the man's malleable features. I had heard that the assassins were supposed to be powerful, professional, but if its leadership cannot even see the bigger picture, perhaps we don't want to associate with you, which meant that the Gaul was just as disposable as his subordinates. But Cinder's other associates remained mute, Adam waiting for someone else to make the first move. Still, I might ask you to reconsider. It would be a shame if such talent ended up on the losing side. Perhaps. You sound doubtful. Oh, on the contrary, Miss Fall, I think you have a very good chance of succeeding. If the conversation were a war, it was clear that the Gaul would have long since outmaneuvered his opponent and beaten them with repeated ambushes and surprise attacks. The man himself, however, was hardly impressive, even if he did have some tricks up the baggy sleeves of his trench coat, mingling in with the manila folders in his Zippo lighter. They doubted he was capable of fighting a frontline fighter. In fact, everyone could clearly feel the difference in power as Cinder faced him down. With not a blink, she could incinerate the Shadow's guardian, the chief of intelligence, and that he would admit to such weakness seemed a critical error. And you assume that this is where we want to be as well. As the Gaul shook his head, they found themselves back in the briefing room, back in the classroom, being lectured by a crusting old professor. Yours will be a tolerant law with no room for dissent. This is clear enough from what you have demonstrated thus far. However, where is our group in this new world order? When the rebels become the rulers, what is there left to fight for? This was clearly directed to the terrorist leader, and as such went over Cinder's head. What are you getting at? There's something to be a miscommunication about the assassins. We survive not because we are tenaciously trying to claw our way up the food chain. We exist because there is a need for us, of some form or another. Just as humanity will always require huntsmen and huntresses to protect them from monsters, we will be here to protect people from themselves. Here there was a glance towards Team Kasai, Kitsune specifically, and there was any doubt the doggo knew his secret. It had vanished along with any hope of reconciliation with the White Fang and Cinder. This is why the next generation is so important, says the man who let the one slip through his fingers, Cinder taunted. Tired of being ignored, she gestured to her subordinate, who hadn't said a word since he'd received the bribe. I've let quite a few slip, Dougal conceded, like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. You know of one. The black is dead. How is Amber, by the way? He hadn't finished asking before Cinder's eyes. Once the patient amber glowed a dangerous gold, which seemed to ignite her flesh. Dougal but raised a thin eyebrow, barely visible between his glasses and his hat. Do I need to mention your partners? And like a child throwing a tantrum, Cinder's display of power was shut down in light of a higher authority. I thought not. Come. Emerald and the rest once again raised their weapons as the Gaul removed his hand from his pocket. Ignoring them and waving lazily towards Kitsune and his team, they hesitated, still not expecting to be allowed to leave, let alone through the front door. But no one tried to stop them as they tiptoed past in a loose formation, following the temporary boss who had his back turned, apathetic to the anatomic glares. Everything burns, you know. Cinder snarled petulantly and bent on getting the last word, even those who try to put out the flames. And wherever there's fire, you get shadows. Everyone, including Team Kansai, was waiting with weapons moments away from use, waiting for this war of words and shadows to turn bloody. Dougal, however, turned just enough to give Cinder a horror show of a smile and said, "Have a good life, Miss Fall." Do we really let them go like that? Mercury might have voiced a similar opinion, except that he would never be caught dead agreeing with Emerald. He would also never willingly admit to being worried about a potential face-off between them and the assassins. So instead, he feigned disinterest, but found his gift waiting in his lap, laughing at him with its appositiveness. But averting his eyes, he accidentally caught the gaze of Adam, who could see through the tough guy persona. We attack him. We invite retaliation from assassins in both Vale and the North, not to mention Atlas's official government. Refusing to admit his empathy, Adam provided a very real excuse why they should be worried about confrontation. We're simply not strong enough. Cinder picked up the scroll that was to be signed as proof of the mission's success, and it started to burn from the ground up in her hands, like the fuse for a stack of dynamite. The tongues of flames illuminated a smile that was more pyro than mania on her lips. Not yet. Clarity. This was all a test. Surprise was the closest thing they could equate Dougal's expression to, blinking slowly behind his thick lenses as he looked back at the four assassins who were following him out the warehouse. Of course, this answer might have been meant they failed, but then again, maybe he just expected the question to wait until they had returned to base. Jin's reports of you four are obviously biased, and while I could infer some things even from that, I needed an objective measure. So you consider a man's life to be as disposable as a litmus test? Kitsune was doing a good job of keeping his tone on an even level with his superiors, but his teammates knew better. If there was such a thing as a litmus test for animosity, their captain would be turning dark red. Of course not. Dougal was the first to break this detent, shocking the four with the seriousness they kept forgetting he possessed. Is it true? I want to see how you handle the contract under the best conditions, maximum opportunity, and minimum oversight. Yes, over sometimes a single piece of information is worth more than a man's life. Tonight we learned that certain groups are consolidating throughout, trying to upset the balance of power in a way that will cost many more lives than just Tuskens. Was this not worth knowing? Was this a rhetorical or a real question? Was this a lecture hall or a forum where their voice carried equal weight? You killed him, didn't you? This shouldn't have surprised them that Kitsune worked it out first. Naruto wouldn't be distracted by moral ambiguity and had no need to assuage Dogal's ego. Under Kitsune's accusation, the man seemed to deflate, partly melt like a wax candle on a windowsill. Make no mistake, if not him, if not you or I, it would have been another. Maybe he was right, but it didn't make them feel better, and they couldn't give Dougal the satisfaction of admitting it either. So does it mean we failed? Iroh's question might have been regarded as callous, but the rest of them honestly couldn't see where else to go from there if there was no failure from them in the assassins. Straightening up, the senior operative went back to his original passive state, half filling the oversized trench coat and newsboy cap that made him look like a suspicious mushroom. No, he gave them another beckoning wave before shoving the hand into his pocket and reassuming the familiar trek back to base, not looking to see if they were following. I gave you free rein to do what you saw fit, therefore I can't exactly criticize you, can I? Jin certainly would have. But again, what about next time? This time they could clearly tell they'd managed to catch him off guard. It was a small consolation, even smaller widening of his milky brown eyes despite the intensely magnifying lenses, and lastly, and almost incredulous smile that was warmer than the icy grin he'd given Cinder. We'll have to see, won't we? End of chapter 16.